Hi, welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's video I'm doing a reading vlog, which I haven't done in quite a while. I haven't done one for almost a year, but this will be a different type of a reading vlog because your girl is in a reading slump and I'll be reading until I get a 5-star read. You heard that right. I am in a reading slump. It was bound to happen. I get into a reading slump at least once a year, and I'm going to try to challenge myself to get out of this reading slump by reading until I get a 5-star read. And the catch is I have to read the books physically, because if you know me and have watched my channel for a while, you'll know that I'm a full-time DoorDash and Uber Eats driver. I actually did a video of a week in my life as a full-time DoorDash and Uber Eats driver, and I'll link that video down below in the description. But because of the nature of my job, I don't really have the time anymore to like physically sit down and read a physical book, if that makes sense. And if anyone knows me well, I am a physical book reader girly, and listening to audiobooks is great, especially when you're in situations like mine where you're busy, go all the time. But it really wears down on you to an extent if you're just listening to audiobooks like all of the time. And so I think that what has put me into a slump is just listening to so many audiobooks. Honestly, I think the last time I remember physically reading a book was like months ago, back in April, and it is now August when I'm filming this right now. So it's been quite a while, a few months actually, since I've read an actual physical book. So I'm gonna try to read physically in hopes that will also help me to like get out of this reading slump. So the first book that I'll be reading for this challenge is From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon. And the last physical book that I read that I mentioned here just a few moments ago was an Amy Harmon book. It was called What the Wind Knows, I believe, by her, and that was a fantastic book. I actually gave that book 5 stars. And I've read one other book by her called Where the Lost Wander, and I read that back in the fall of 2024, so last year, and that was a 6-star read for me. So she writes fantastic books, and I have a feeling that she's going to become one of my favorite authors of all time. I just like to read at least 3 of an author's books in order to officially call them my favorite author. So I'm hoping that this book, From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon, makes her qualify in my mind as one of my favorite authors. So I'm just going to get into reading this. I'm going to read the back of this book for you, the synopsis, so that you get a gist of what this book is about. Amy Harmon writes a lot of historical fiction, and I believe this is historical fiction as well. It is based, I think, in Italy during World War II, but that's the only thing that I know about it. And let's just get to the synopsis here, because I'm horrible at describing books before I read them. I'm trying to get better at that, but for now, the best that I can do in describing this book is just reading the synopsis off the back of the book. So here you go. It says, Italy, 1943, Germany occupies much of the country, placing the Jewish population in grave danger during World War II. As children, Eva Roselli and Angelo Bianco were raised like family but divided by circumstance and religion. As the years go by, the two find themselves falling in love. But the church calls to Angelo, and despite the deep feelings for Eva, he chooses the priesthood. Now, more than a decade later, Angelo is a Catholic priest and Eva is a woman with nowhere to turn. With the Gestapo closing in, Angelo hides Eva within the walls of a convent, where Eva discovers she is just one of many Jews being sheltered by the Catholic Church. But Eva can't quietly hide, waiting for deliverance, while Angelo risks everything to keep her safe. With the world at war and so many in need, Angelo and Eva face trial after trial choice after agonizing choice until fate and fortune finally collide, leaving them with the most difficult decision of all. That sounds really intriguing to me. Amy Harmon doesn't consider herself a Christian fiction author or any of her books Christian fiction books, but I believe Amy Harmon is a Christian and considers herself to be a follower of Jesus. So her books, even though I wouldn't necessarily even call her books like clean, because her books do like talk about sex, but I wouldn't say that her books are like lustful at all or spicy. I would say that they do include sexual content, but they're not corn, if you get my drift. So I really enjoy her books. I am looking forward to reading and starting from Sand and Ash. I have a good feeling about this book. This might honestly be a short blog because of the fact that this might be a 5-star read for me, and I hope it is, because Amy Harmon, from what I'm getting from her and her writing, is that she'll be a favorite author of mine. So let's get to reading. So I need to update y'all on my progress on From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon. It's been a week since I've talked to you guys on here, so it's been a while, and I've only gotten like 47 pages into this book, which is around 12% according to Goodreads. And then I also started another book on Audible. It's an audiobook, of course. It's called Bonhoeffer, and it's by Eric Metaxas, if I'm not mispronouncing his name. I'll put an image of the cover on the screen here. And essentially, it's just about the life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. If you're not familiar, Dietrich Bonhoeffer lived during World War II. He was a pastor, and he led the church in Germany. Like, he was German, actually. And he led the church during the time of World War II. Like, he was a very prominent leader and pastor in the church during that time, which of course was very crazy because Hitler was in charge. So he ended up actually like planning to, like, what's that word? Oh, the word is assassinate. He was planning on assassinating Hitler. I forgot the word there for a second, I don't know why, but he felt really convicted to basically assassinate Hitler because of the fact that Hitler was doing so much evil during the time in which he was a leader of Germany. And I'm finding the audiobook to Bonhoeffer, the book that I'm listening to be very compelling, and I'm honestly really, really impressed. I don't usually like listen to or read nonfictions in general, but I made it a goal for myself to read or listen to at least one nonfiction or read one nonfiction per month, and it's been going well so far. I've been able to stay on track with that goal for the most of this year. But this has to be my like most favorite nonfiction that I've read this year so far. I don't think it's going to be a 5-star, but it's definitely going to be like a 4.5 star. The only reason why it's not going to be a 5-star is because there's just like so much to Dietrich Bonhoeffer's life that like I'm sort of getting lost a little bit, but for the most part, like, it's very, very, very compelling. It's very interesting. It's very engaging. And I think Dietrich Bonhoeffer is such a great Christian man of faith that I can look up to. And I actually watched the movie about him like not too long ago that just came out recently. It was produced by Angel Studios, I believe. But yeah, I'm really enjoying that so far. I'm about 60% of the way through that audiobook, so I'm assuming that I should be finished within the next week or so with that book because of the fact that I usually listen to it when I'm working. For those who don't know, I do DoorDash and Uber Eats full time, so being able to listen to an audiobook is really easy in the car while I'm doing orders. But yeah, I'm gonna try to read right now a little bit more of From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon because I really just haven't had the time to like just sit down and physically read. That's why I have been listening to a lot of audiobooks recently, because it's just a lot easier for me to get to audiobooks rather than sitting down and reading, because I don't have a lot of time just to sit down because of the nature of my work. But I am gonna try to get through more of this book. I can already tell, like, even though I'm only like on chapter, I don't even know what chapter I'm on, to be honest. Let me see. I'm almost at chapter 4, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of funny how it's broken up. Like, some chapters have actual chapter headings and some don't. So I'm almost at chapter 4. I'm at like this like page break where it's like not necessarily a new chapter, but it's like almost at a new chapter, but it was a good place for me to stop. Does this make sense? Like, see how there's like no like chapter heading here? Like it's clearly like a new section, but it's not a new chapter. Like, it doesn't have a chapter heading. But yeah, I'm on page, like I mentioned before, page 47, about 12% of the way through the book. And I'm really loving this so far. I honestly, this might be a boring reading vlog because this honestly might be my next 5-star read, and I know I said before that I'm just gonna read until I get my next 5-star read because I've been in a reading slump, but this might be my next 5-star read, so we'll see if see if I can speak English. Let's see if it is. That's what I'm trying to say. Since I last updated you, but I have officially come to the 50% mark of From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon, and I just wanted to do a little check-in, and I can say that I absolutely am loving this book. I don't know what it is with Amy Harmon, but like her writing style just like transports you right into the story, and it feels like I'm watching a movie in my head while I'm reading. So basically, it's about this girl named Eva who's an Italian Jew and this Italian priest who grew up together, and they fall in love over the years. They're not like biological siblings. They are not related whatsoever, but they did grow up in the same household and they fall in love, like I mentioned. But anyways, like, they obviously go their separate ways because of the fact that she's an Italian Jew and he becomes a Catholic priest, and Catholic priests, as you can already assume, don't get married. And this is the time during World War II. So like, of course, like, the Jews are being persecuted during that time by the Germans. Like, at one point, the Germans actually occupy Italy. So it becomes very clear that Eva is unsafe. So Angelo, the Catholic priest, hides her in his church. So it's a really riveting story so far. I won't say much more about the story other than that, but just know that like I'm absolutely loving it, and it's probably gonna be a 5-star because I am halfway through the book, and at this point I think I have a fair opinion of like where this is gonna go. So like, I do think that this is gonna be a 5-star read for me. So since the last time I checked in, I finished the Bonhoeffer audiobook that I was listening to. I was initially gonna give that a 5-star, but like, it actually ended up being a 4.5-star just because of the fact that it was really long. Like, I was engaged the whole entire time, but the fact of the matter is like, I think the author was trying to fit so much into the book where I feel like a lot of the details were lost. So I ended up giving it 4.5 stars instead of 5 stars just because of the length of the book. Not that it wasn't a great book and not that it wasn't exciting or engaging, but it was just a little bit too long for my liking. But for a nonfiction, that's like a really good rating from me because of the fact that like I'm not a big nonfiction person in general. So I definitely recommend you read that book if you haven't already, if you're at all interested in Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the pastor who was killed during World War II. He actually was killed because, first of all, he was a pastor and he was like calling out the Nazi party for what they were doing. And secondly, he actually plotted to kill Hitler. He was obviously unsuccessful, but like that's why the Nazis had killed him, is for one, being a pastor, and then number two, for plotting to kill Hitler. But this was like a real life story. Like there's actually a movie made about him. So definitely go watch the movie. It's produced by Angel Studios and I watched it not too long ago. It either came out earlier this year or last year. It was great and it inspired me to read this Bonhoeffer book. And then the next thing that I listened on audio was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And I had gotten this book when I was like in the 4th grade and I was awarded it when I was like 8 years old for like most improved in my class. But I ended up not reading it at the time because it was just a really confusing storyline for me. I would like read the first chapter like multiple times throughout when I was like in elementary school and middle school, but it just wasn't like clicking for me. So I ended up picking it up like at the ripe old age of 29. And I was listening to it on audio and I got about 50% of the way through and I just had to DNF it and I automatically gave it a 1 star. I did mark it as read on Goodreads because I did make it halfway through. And there was just a lot of demonic undertones and I didn't appreciate that whatsoever. You can go watch my August reading wrap up for my more in-depth thoughts of that and why I think it's demonic, and I'll link that video down below. And then what I'm currently listening to on audiobook is like, or on audio. It's an audiobook, but I'm listening to it on audio. Is that correct? The correct terminology? Whatever, you know what I'm saying. I'm currently listening to on audio. It's, what's it called? The House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne. It's okay. It's considered a classic and it's also considered like a gothic type book. It's one of the most odd books I've ever read, but I'm gonna push through and finish it. I almost thought I was gonna DNF that as well, but I'm not. I'm gonna push through. But that's kind of my update right now, and I'm just excited to finish From Sand and Ash because I think I'm gonna give it a 5 star, which is exciting. But yeah, thanks for following along with this vlog. I'll be back with another check-in soon. It's been a hot minute since I last updated you. I was actually at like the 50% mark of From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon. Now I'm about like 75% of the way through and I'm absolutely enjoying it. It's definitely going to be a 5-star read from me, but let's wait until we get there. Not quite done with it yet, but I can see myself rating this 5 stars and I'm super excited for that because I haven't had a 5-star read in so long, and that's why I wanted to film this video because it's been such a struggle bus to read something that I actually enjoy reading and why I've been in a reading slump in the first place. But I also want to update you on like my audiobook journey because from when I updated you last, I was in the middle of reading The House of Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne on audio. And I know I said I was going to try to push through that. I actually ended up DNFing it at like the 60% mark. I think that's what I said on Goodreads. And I live about 30 minutes from Salem, so that's the reason why I wanted to read this, and I've visited the House of Seven Gables. It's like an actual place that you can visit in Salem, and it's like a really cool historic place to visit, but there's obviously this book about it as well, and that's why I wanted to read it. And I guess realized that I don't really like gothic books, and I also just found the book to be slightly demonic. So that's why I ended up DNFing it at 60%. And then after that tried to read Wicked by, I think his name is Gregory Maguire. And he, first of all, doesn't really have great writing. And secondly, I've also found this book very demonic as well. I was super excited to read it because of the fact that I just read The Wizard of Oz in August, and I wanted to read this book, Wicked by Gregory Maguire, before I watched the part 2 movie of Wicked, because I watched part 1, like the movie for Wicked, last year, and part 2 is coming out this year for Wicked, the movie, and I wanted to prepare myself, but I just found that it was very demonic. Even his writing style, like I mentioned before, was just horrible. And I DNF'd that at 10%. I just feel like the book and the musical / movie adaptations are so different from each other, and I just couldn't get behind this book whatsoever. I do not recommend it. But I guess what I should also mention is the next audiobook that I actually completed and did actually read or listen to on audiobook all the way through. I did not DNF this one. It was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I actually gave this 4.5 stars because of the fact I would have given it 5 stars, but the fact of the matter is I have a really hard time reading classic books just because of the language that's used. So that's the reason why I didn't give it 5 stars. The storyline, impeccable. The characters, amazing. But it's just the language of what the time it was written in really made me struggle reading it and understanding what was going on in some aspects. So that's why I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5 stars. But that's the only reason why it didn't get a 5 stars, just because of the language. But overall, a great read. And then I tried reading some thrillers because of the fact that it's September and I really wanted to get into the spirit of fall and autumn. I first started, I actually finished this book. I didn't just start it, I also finished it. It's called Saving Noah by Lucinda Berry. And from what I was told, this is a psychological thriller book. But to be honest, I found it more of a I guess if this is even a category or a genre that you could give to a book, I would classify it more as a dark literary fiction. So it's essentially about this guy, or not even guy, he's a teenager who I don't even know if I'm able to say this online, but he's a pedophile, okay? He molests 2 girls that was in his swimming class, and it's just about him, and it's through the lens of his mom and her what I'm trying to say is it was told basically through the eyes of the teenager's mom and her grappling with basically that her son is a pedophile and a child molester. And I honestly just didn't like how she basically made excuses for him and making her son out to be the victim rather than the girls that he molested to be the victims. And I guess this is kind of a spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled for this book, please skip ahead 30 seconds. But I'll give you a moment to do that. So skip ahead 30 seconds right now. Okay, so it also basically made it okay for assisted suicide. So by the end of the book, the kid who molested the 2 girls didn't want to live anymore. He had multiple suicide attempts, and he convinced his mom to help him commit suicide, and that's basically assisted suicide. They masked it as I don't even know how they masked that. He was just oh, you're just gonna help me protect other girls that I could potentially molest in the future. And the mom was like, okay, like as long as it's gonna help me save girls from you, then I guess that makes it okay. And I just didn't like that. I gave the book 2 stars. I mean, I guess I kind of saw it insightful. No, what am I trying to say? I found it insightful to like kind of see like what goes through like a mother's mind of someone who's a pedophile, because like I guess what I'm trying to say, it's a very realistic take on like what probably goes through people's minds who are close to people who are pedophiles. But the reason why I gave it 2 stars is that I just don't think what she did was right like whatsoever, and I don't think what he did was right whatsoever either. So that's why I gave it 2 stars. And then the next book I finished was The Fourth Monkey by J.D. Barker. This was another thriller book. And I gave this 3 stars because it did keep me intrigued for the first, like, I guess like 60 or 70% of the book. So essentially what this is about is this guy who is a serial killer, but he basically kills off people who have done really bad things. But it kind of felt like the TV show Criminal Minds, if you're familiar, and I'm not a big fan of Criminal Minds and that type of like CIA, FBI type show or any sort of book adaptation that reminds me of that. I also realized I don't like gore in books. This is a very gory book. So that's why I gave it 3 stars, even though like the reason why I gave it 3 stars is because it did keep me intrigued for the majority of the book, I would say. And I was definitely interested in like the concept of the book, but in the last like 30 or 40% of the book, it just kind of went downhill. Like I got very lost in like what they were trying to do, and then I also just didn't appreciate like the goriness of it or like the Criminal Minds type aspect of it. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. It was just kind of like mid and average and like maybe not my typical thriller type enjoyment of it, if that makes sense. Like that's not my type of a thriller. Like I do like thrillers, but that I guess is just not my type of a thriller. And then the next book that I actually DNF'd, it was at 30% of the book. It was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. And the reason why I DNF'd this book was, first of all, it was just really weird. It was a very weird storyline. I don't even think this should have been classified as like a horror book because of the fact that like it felt like more of a literary fiction with like just like a twist of horror, like, or just like a little drop of horror. So basically it's about this girl who lives out in California is what I'm trying to say, and she finds out that her parents died in a car accident, so she has to go back home to like either North or South Carolina, I can't remember, and she has to deal with her brother that she hasn't talked to in years and basically coordinate like the funeral and all that and the selling of the house and so forth. And her mom has like a really weird like doll and puppet obsession, and that's what she did for work actually. And it got to the point in the book where like creepy stuff was starting to happen, and there was this one point, this is not a spoiler by the way, but like basically these like little stuffed squirrels, I guess you would call them, that her mom used as like puppets, I guess, in her shows. They were like dressed up as the nativity scene, so like there was a squirrel Jesus and a squirrel Joseph and a squirrel Mary. I know, it sounds weird, doesn't it? So, first of all, that got me because I was like, well, this is kind of blasphemous. Second of all, like, I guess like these squirrels like came alive and started attacking the girl because she was like trying to clean out the house. And that just got me. I was like, I'm done. This is stupid. Is this supposed to be comical? Because it's really honestly not funny. It's just blasphemous and weird. So I just ended up DNFing it after that scene because I was just like, this is just so weird. Like literally so weird. But anyway, yeah, I'm 75% of the way through From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon, and then I actually started an audiobook called You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose, and I'm actually really liking it so far. I think this is the type of thriller that I was actually craving, because when it comes to thrillers, I'm realizing I'm more of just like, if this is even the correct terminology of what I can describe this thriller as, it's more of like a fluffy thriller, if that makes sense. It's just very captivating, very intriguing, very engaging. Like, it sucks you right in, but it also doesn't take a lot of brain power, if that makes sense. And there's not a lot of gore either. It's just like very like head snapping moments, like like intriguing, like there's always something going on, do you know what I mean? Like, but it's also not like hard to grasp either. Like, there's not many brain cells being used, if that makes sense. Like, that's why I love Frida McFadden's books so much. Like, I would classify Frida McFadden as like not like the best writer of all time, but she definitely knows how to write a book that like draws you in. And I feel like this book, You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose, is like similar in that way, where it's like, it's not like the best book I've ever read. It's like not like the most like fabulous writing, but like, does it grab you? Does it keep you engaged? Yes, it does. So I'm enjoying this so far. I'm only like 14% of the way through, but I'm hoping by the time I finish From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon, I would have also finished You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose, so I can give you updates on both of those. But yeah, that's just kind of my update as of right now. Another day, another update. Yes, you can tell that I got a haircut since the last time I updated you. I just got a little trim because the ends were super dead. But anyways, still in my pajamas, my Jesus is King shirt that I got off of Amazon not too long ago. But I wanted to update you because I finished From Sand and Ash. I'm so excited. I gave it 5 stars, so that helps me complete this video because I was reading until I got a 5-star read. I have finished some other books in the meantime since I last updated you as well, some audiobooks, because while I was reading From Sand and Ash physically, I was also listening to audiobooks while I was working, because for those who don't know, I do DoorDash and Uber Eats full time, so I have a lot of time to do that while I'm working, to listen to audiobooks. So let me just go on Goodreads to tell you what I read, because as you can probably already assume, they weren't 5-star reads. I do have some 4 stars in there because some of them were actually pretty decent, but From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon is my 5-star read that is completing this mission for me. But I think the last audiobook that I updated you on, I was reading You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose, and I gave that 4 stars. I don't think I'll ever give a thriller more than like 4 or 4.5 stars because of the fact that it's a thriller, and in nature it's kind of creepy and suspenseful, so I can never foresee myself giving a thriller or a mystery 5 stars unless it like truly blows me out of the water, but I haven't found one of those yet. I just find thrillers and mysteries to be like a fluffy good time, if that makes sense. It's sort of a book that's like a palate cleanser for me, reading mysteries and thrillers. It kind of makes me, you know, get back into the mood of reading, if that makes sense at all. So I did give You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose 4 stars. And then the next audiobook that I completed was The Tenant by Frida McFadden, because I heard that they're actually in the works of making a movie about this book, actually, along with the Housemaid book that she has also written. I've already read The Housemaid before, and I can't wait for the movie to come out in December, But I heard another movie by Frida McFadden, The Tenant, is also coming out as a movie. So I wanted to read that, and I also gave that 4 stars. I don't know if I gave you a synopsis of either of those books, so I'll do that now. So You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose is essentially about this girl who is a workaholic, and she's from New York City, and she goes to this Airbnb out in Wyoming on this like dude ranch sort of a thing. And it's not one of those Airbnbs where you get the whole house to yourself. You're just basically renting a room. So the owner of the house is actually living there while she's visiting. And it just goes downhill from there. Like, a lot of creepy stuff is noticed and observed by the girl who's staying at the Airbnb. And there's a lot of twists and turns, and it's just an Airbnb gone wrong. And it was exactly what I needed to listen to at the time, and what I needed to get me along in my reading progress of getting out of my reading slump. And then The Tenant, as you can probably assume, is about an apartment tenant. So basically, this couple is really struggling for money because the man just lost his job as like a vice president of this like really big company, and so they take in this apartment tenant into their home in New York City. It's like one of those like really pretty like brick buildings that you see in New York City. So they have obviously a very high mortgage, and they have an extra room in their, house. So they rent it out to this girl, and just creepy things go down from there. A lot of suspicious behavior, and it's really twisty and turny, and it was also exactly what I needed to hear and listen to at the time. Both of them 4 stars, really decent reads, and I definitely recommend them. And then the next book that I kind of read, I actually DNF'd this next one. It's called In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. And I've heard really good things about Ruth Ware, and I wanted to give her a try. So basically this book is about this girl who lives in England along with all of the other characters in this book. And the main female character is invited to this bachelorette party at this cabin, like in the woods. I know, sounds creepy, right? Already. But anyways, she's invited out to this bachelorette party of like a childhood friend that she hadn't talked to in like legitimate years. So she's already kind of confused of like why she's being invited to the bachelorette party when she's not even actually invited to the wedding, or she's not in the wedding as like a bridesmaid or anything. And I only got, I think, 40% of the way through this book, so almost halfway. But honestly, it was super, super slow. By like the 40 or 50% mark, I would have thought like more things would have been happening, but they weren't. And also, like, they essentially really glorify like a lot of like same-sex relationships, and they referenced those relationships like all the time throughout the book, or at least throughout the book that I read up until. And then they started doing this like a Ouija board like as a like bonding activity, and that's where I stopped reading, because I was like, not doing that, not letting no demonic influences into my life. So that's where I stopped reading it, and that's where I DNF'd it, because I was just like, I could kind of deal with like the same-sex relationships being mentioned, because nearly half of the characters were a part of the LGBT community. But my main problem was like, it was that, but then it was also the Ouija board. It was like, 1 strike, 2 strikes, you're out. Not even 3 strikes and you're out. 2 strikes and you're out with me for this one. But yeah, I DNF'd that one. And then the next book that I listened to was Loving Jesus by Mother Teresa. And for those who don't know, I grew up Catholic, but I don't identify as Catholic anymore. I go to a non-denominational church now. But I have some issues with the Catholic Church, but I'm not going to mention that here because I don't feel like it's appropriate to mention it here. If you have any questions about my thoughts, please feel free to comment and we can talk about it there. But I gave this book 2 stars. I really admired, like, growing up Mother Teresa, and I still admire her, like, for the things that she did for the poor in India. And I do think she was saved. I do think that she's in heaven with Jesus now. But I guess I'll go into a little bit of the reasoning why I have problems with the Catholic Church. But that being is that a lot of the Catholic sentiments are that you basically earn your way to heaven by good works. And if that was the case, we wouldn't need Jesus dying on the cross for us. So I just found that throughout this book, there was a lot of talk of that. And there was also talks of, like, praying to the saints and praying to Mary. And that's, like, another issue that I have with the Catholic Church is you don't need to do that. You can pray directly to God because Jesus is our intercessor. Like, you don't need other intercessors like Mary or the saints. Like, Jesus is the great intercessor because he died for us on the cross. So that's why I gave it 2 stars. There was, like, some things in the book that, like, I was like, okay, that's good to know. I definitely learned a lot about her as a person and the work that she's done. And it did have some, like, slight faith inspiration that I took out of it. But all in all, like, overall, I should say in general, I found it a little subpar. And also some things I just generally didn't agree with and were honestly blasphemous. So that's why I gave Loving Jesus by Mother Teresa. Well, it's not Loving Jesus by Mother Teresa, it's Loving Jesus, Mother Teresa by Jose Luis Gonzalez Balado. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Basically, this book is, like, if I haven't explained it already, is, like, excerpts of, like, different speeches and different writings that Mother Teresa has done or said, and it all encapsulates how to love Jesus by loving people, especially the poor of the poor. And he, I guess, edited it, but the majority of the work that's in there is by Mother Teresa, but is just edited by this Jose guy. But anyways, on to the next book that I listened to. It was Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but I DNF'd that at 35%. Because first of all, it was so slow. Like, I thought the other book, In a Dark, Dark Wood, was slow. But no, Local Woman Missing was even slower. And it talks a lot about cheating, justifying abortion, child abuse, the LGBT whatever community, and all those things I'm just, like, really strongly against. And thankfully I DNF'd it before going any further. So I'm just grateful that I DNF'd it when I did, because I could just see it going down, like, this certain route, and I just didn't want to waste any more of my time. But anyway, the next book, this is gonna be crazy, another DNF. Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. I had all 3 books in this trilogy on my shelves because ever since I was a kid, I've been wanting to read these books. I always saw all these other kids reading them when I was growing up, but at the ripe old age of 29, I finally got around to it, and I DNF'd this at 10%. I know, pretty early on in the book. But essentially this is a middle grade book. It's a book about books, and it's a middle grade book is what I'm trying to say. And there was just, like, really blasphemous things going on, even in the first 10% of the book. And for being a middle grade book, I was honestly really surprised, because middle grades are meant to be read by children, okay? The first problem that I had was it was describing a man selling Bible as being, like, miserable in nature. And I was like, why target someone selling Bibles in such a bad light. And then the second thing was that the father was explaining that his sister, so the female main character's aunt, would sell her soul to the devil for the correct book. And as soon as I listened to that on the audiobook, I was like, am I reading a middle grade book right now? And then the third thing that like really got to me, which actually made me DNF the book, was that it mentioned the characters entering the aunt's library, and it was classified as her Holy of Holies, which, if you are a Christian, you know what the Holy of Holies is. It's essentially in the Old Testament where it was associated with the Lord. That's like where the Lord's presence was. Like it was in the innermost of like the tabernacle. So like why would you associate your library as like basically the presence of God? I don't understand that. So there was just like 3 blasphemous statements being mentioned in the first 10% of the book, and it, for being a middle grade, a children's book, I just didn't appreciate that like whatsoever. The next book that I finished on audio was Me's Stories of My Life by Katharine Hepburn. I gave this 3 stars. Basically, this is a book by Katharine Hepburn, and she basically just gives snippets of her life. I found it intriguing. I actually am named after Katharine Hepburn. That's where I get the spelling of my name. But I just found it really scattered, and it had a lot of missing holes from her life. And there is overall just like a lot of things that I wanted to learn about her that I just didn't get from the book. And I also found the audiobook, like the narration, on YouTube, so it's free, so you can listen to it too. And it's actually narrated by her, which I really liked. But like I mentioned, it was okay. Like I liked learning about some aspects of her life, but found it just really scattered, and there's a lot of, you know, missing holes that I would have liked to learn about her life. But that was the next audiobook that I read. Another book that I DNF'd was Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. And I DNF'd this at 40%, so I was just about halfway through this book. And I just found that there was this one instance in the book. This book, well, first of all, this book is about this man who's basically like a con artist. And he has like 2 separate lives that he's living. Like he's just basically cheating on his wife with this other woman, and then the other woman doesn't know that he's married, and he's telling a whole different story to the other woman. And there was this mention of like this kid wanting to transition like genders, and it was basically affirming that. It was basically saying like that was okay for a child to think about and to do, like to change their genders at such a young age. I don't agree with transgenderism at all, actually. So the fact of the matter is like, whether it was a kid or not, or even an adult, I wouldn't have appreciated it being in the book anyways. And it just affirmed the person in their decision of like, or this child, it wasn't a grown adult, it was a child. They were like basically affirming like, yeah, that's okay to do. No, that is pedophilia at its finest, of trying to get some kid to change their genders. But anyways, the next book that I DNF'd yet again was The Wishing Spell by Chris Colfer. Much like Inkheart by Cornelia Funk, this was another book that I had been wanting to read since I was a kid, but I DNF'd it at 25%. And basically this is another book, like a story about stories, and these kids get transported into this like fairy tale world through this like magical book that the grandmother gives them. It's this brother and sister duo, and so when they go into the book, it doesn't even explain like how they even get into the book or like the magic that's used. So that was, first of all, confusing and just didn't make sense. And secondly, like, how did the author come to the conclusion of like all of these Prince Charmings in this like fairy tale world to be brothers? Like, she basically tells the reader that like all of these Prince Charmings, like Snow White's Prince Charming and Cinderella's Prince Charming and Sleeping Beauty's Prince Charming are all brothers. And I'm like, as someone who's worked at Disney before, like how do you come to that conclusion? Like Disney is like the ultimate hearsay. Is that the word for it? No. They're like the ultimatum, or not the ultimatum. They are like the standard in which the fairy tales are portrayed, and even Disney doesn't even acknowledge like that the Prince Charmings are brothers. So I don't know where this author is getting that information from. And also the female main character, like before she's transported into this fairy tale world with her brother through this like magical book, there's some scenes of them in class in this schoolroom, and basically this teacher is trying to get them to, you know, get the messaging of these fairy tales and basically explain like what these fairy tales are trying to teach them, if that makes sense at all. And the female main character explains that one of these fairy tales teaches them about karma, like what you put out comes back, if that makes sense. And I just didn't appreciate that being in a middle grade like children's book because of the fact that like it's new agey and it's witchy, and karma as a Christian doesn't exist. Like it's all God. Do you know what I mean? So why are we putting new age concepts into children's books, like middle grade children's books? It just doesn't make sense. And then the last and final book before I finished From Sand and Ash by Amy Harriman was The Club by Ellery Lloyd, and I DNF'd this at 25%. Yes, I know. I DNF'd a lot of books recently because I just wasn't having it with these books. I feel like a lot of these books, I have noticed that the Holy Spirit has made me more and more sensitive towards what I'm taking in terms of reading. Even with TV shows and movies too, I'm more sensitive about what I'm taking in terms of entertainment, even music too. But essentially this book is about this club, as you can assume by the title, and it's a very elite club to be a part of on this island, and you have to be either like a very high like socialite, elite socialite, or a celebrity to be a part of this club. And this is basically told through like multiple POVs, one of them being like one of the workers at this club. And I just found this book to be way too over detailed to the point where I just like didn't care. And the whole premise of the book is really intriguing, which I would be interested in seeing if there's a similar book to this that isn't so, you know, slow and detailed. But the execution was just like, for this book, essentially, what am I even trying to say? I can't even speak English right now. The execution of this book just wasn't there. I feel like the concept was super interesting, but I just wasn't feeling it. It needed to be more engaging. But those were the books that I listened to on audio before I finished From Sand and Ash by Amy Harriman. But I feel like now I'm getting a better handle of my reading slump that I've been in. I know, as you could probably assume from all of the DNFs that I just talked about, that I am in a serious reading slump. But I feel like since reading From Sand and Ash by Amy Harriman, I'm so sorry. I had my camera battery die, so I apologize if the camera angle is a little bit different. But ever since reading From Sand and Ash and finishing that by Amy Harriman, I feel like I'm slowly but surely getting out of my reading slump. As you can probably tell from all the DNFs, I definitely am learning like what I do and don't like in books, and that I am in a reading slump. But From Sand and Ash by Amy Harriman has definitely helped me get out of that, and I'm still getting out of it. So I'm hoping to pick up more books in the future that I like, and I'm so glad that I was finally able to find a 5-star read. But yeah, thank you so much for following along. I really appreciate you watching this video. It's probably really long at this point. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I still have to edit it, but it honestly took me over a month to read From Sand and Ash because I just don't have the time at this season in my life to sit down and physically read books. I listen to mostly audiobooks in this video because that's just what I can do right now while I'm working. But I'm so glad I was able to finish From Sand and Ash by Amy Harmon and read it physically and give it 5 stars. But yeah, again, thank you so much for watching this video. Do all the YouTube things that you know how to do, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!